to our Tuesday Live. So excited. Okay, just gonna let that close out and then we are going to dive in because today we're gonna have a conversation about boundaries, confidently holding those boundaries, expertly communicating your needs, and really deepening the richness in every single one of your relationships. All right, so welcome. If you're here live, drop me a comment. Let me know that you're here. If you're here on a replay, let me know that too. Love to connect with you guys. Obviously, it's so fun to be in a live environment where we can interact in real time. And the beauty of technology is that we get to have replays, right? All right, so I want to talk with you guys. I want to share with you a story. I want to share with you something that happened a few days ago. So today's Tuesday, so Friday night, I think. And I want to share this with you because it really actually touches on all the things we're going to talk about in this one story. But so Friday night, I think we'd had dinner with the kids, and Pete and I were getting ready to watch a show, and there was something going on, and I heard something, right? So anytime something comes up for us, there's typically some kind of an external trigger, something we heard, something we saw, something we felt, right? So I heard something, and what I heard caused an emotion to come up for me. And the emotion was, my immediate feeling was feeling a little bit left out. Underneath that was I felt a little bit sad, and underneath that was I realized that I was missing my people, right? I was missing my close friends, I was missing some of my Minnesota people, and then it got really clear that I was also missing my community here, like, because we've been so busy and there's so much going on in everybody's lives, and so it became really clear that I needed to be intentional about my need for connection, right, and time with friends and all of that. So the point of this story around needs and boundaries in relationship is that I was feeling all of these things, but I hadn't really shared it. And we were getting ready to watch a show, and if you have somebody in your life, whether it's your spouse or your partner or a best girlfriend or a sibling or whatever, that really knows you and can read your energy, they kind of, people know when we're off, right? So Pete clearly knew that something was going on, and so he paused what we were doing. He's like, okay, talk to me. So I shared with him kind of what I was feeling, and there were some tears for me. And what was so amazing in that conversation was he was super clear and supportive around how do we fill that need, right? So for me to be able to communicate that need and him to be able to support that in such an active and proactive way was really amazing. And so actually in that moment, we're like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. This is how we're gonna fill this need for me inside of my well-being, my relationships, etc. Now, the second part of that conversation is that we have something coming up, and I'm anticipating there to be a bit of a challenge in this particular circumstance. And I'm not going to get into the details because it doesn't really matter. So I was expressing my anxiety around that. And a boundary that I have around this particular person and the circumstance and the situation. And so for me, it felt so good to be able to safely communicate, like, here's what I'm good with, here's what I'm not, and here's what I think needs to happen, and him being fully supportive. So again, I was able to express a boundary that I will firmly hold for my own well-being and my own energy protection and my own mental health, right? And then also clearly communicating my needs inside of our relationship around this circumstance, like what I need from myself, what I need from him, and what I anticipate needing in the circumstance. So not only did we have a boundaries conversation, but a very clear needs conversation. And I just want to say, like, so many of us in this conversation right now, so many of you are in this space because you aren't currently in a relationship that is fulfilling. You aren't currently with that person that you know that you're meant to be. And so all of this is really important as we kind of prepare you to step into that again in the future. So I'm going to share some tips with you. I also put together a one-page both on boundaries, saying no, and then also I'm going to give you a little bit of homework around really getting clear and figuring out what your needs are inside of your relationships. And again, this can be in romantic relationship, it can literally be in friendships, in family, whatever the dynamics are. It's also really, really good for you to start getting clear so that when that time comes, that you've healed what needs to be healed and you're ready to call in that love that is worthy of you, that's meant for you, that you know what your needs are and that you can express them and you can articulate them so that it is less of a guessing game, right, for your partner, and it gives you something such a solid foundation to build from and grow from. So I want to talk a little bit about boundaries, but before I do that, I want to give you another example just because it literally happened a couple of hours ago, and it was, again, it's a great example of holding boundaries and communicating needs. So most of you know I'm not an all or nothing girl. Also, most of you know that I'm not somebody that loves to exercise. It's just never been a part of my thing. I know it's really good for me. I know I feel better. I know I love how it feels when I'm, strength training, but I'm not going to do it on my own. I know that to be true. So I hired a coach and I adore her. She's great. And this morning she no-showed, and it wasn't the first time, right? So it was the second time in as many weeks, just about. And I don't love confrontation in general. I mean, who does really? Like, throw it in the chat if you love confrontation. But here's the thing. I could have very easily just been like, oh, I hope you're okay, let me know, which of course it was my first thought and the first thing I communicated first and foremost. I hope you're okay, because that obviously was my first concern. And I very well could have left it at that, right? And just been like, well, let me know if you're fine, I'm not sure what happened, and then been pissed off about the fact that my time is so limited. And my time is valuable, right? Our time, all of our time, is our most precious resource. And I don't have a lot of time, so when I've carved out time specifically for this purpose, I expect that the other person is also going to show up so that I can depend on that coaching. So I first sent a text saying, I'm here, are you on your way? No response. So then I gave it 5 minutes, and I was like, all right, it's important for me to communicate, hold a boundary, and express what my needs are. So I sent a text off which basically said something along the lines of, I hope you're okay, and I need to express my frustration. I totally get how it happened before. I had been on vacation the week before I came back. It just was an oversight. Fine, no big deal, right? Move on. But I shared, right? To this person how, it's 1:11, how limited my time is and how I've expressed vulnerably that, it's so important for me to be able to do this work with you as the coach because you know what you're doing. I'm not going to get hurt, right? And you're there so I actually do the work, because without that person, for me, without that coach, I'm just not going to do it. And if I do it, it's really not going to give me the outcome that I want, because I'm not going to be doing it, the right way, or I'm not going to be lifting the amount of weights, whatever it is. The point is, I expected her to show up as my coach in this process of this work we're doing together. So I said, I just need to say that, going forward, I can't deal with the no-shows, right? And I need to be able to depend on you to show up and do the work that we've agreed to do together. So I'm expressing my needs, I'm holding a boundary. And I said, just please let me know that you're okay. So she did respond several hours later, and she was like, I'm so sorry, there's no excuse, it wasn't in my calendar, I apologize. And I said, great, I accept your apology, and I just need to know that it's not going to happen again. And what do you need from me in order to support that? So again, let's figure out, I am holding and creating a very clear and firm boundary, expressing my needs, and also providing a solution. So I said, would it be helpful for you if I, texted you the day before, the night before, just to remind you or whatever. And she was like, yes, that would be great. Okay, I have no problem doing that. So as long as it's an agreed upon process, right? Because structure gives us freedom. Process gives us freedom. So all of that to say, let's have a conversation about establishing and maintaining boundaries. And again, I have a one-page on this. If you would like it, just shoot me a DM or drop something in the comments and I will happily send it over to you so that you can have this and start implementing this in your life and in your relationships. So, how to establish and maintain clear boundaries with people who might be negatively affecting you. So, number one, you want to state the boundary clear and firmly, but this is critical, without any anger, right? And the boundary needs to be short and clear, 1 to 2 sentences tops, no long-winded explanations and blah, 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 because it just opens up the possibility for debate and loopholes and arguments, and then it just defeats the whole purpose, right? Number 2, having stated the boundary, expect to be tested somewhere between 1 and 3 times by this person. Just know that that's going to be part of this process so that it doesn't throw you off. And notice that every time you do get tested by this person, you just need to reinforce that boundary clearly and firmly. And again, very short and sweet sentences, not long, rambling, a bunch of words. Now, if you find yourself that you've been tested more than 3 times by this person for this boundary, then you need to actually assume that it's really not necessarily them. You need to actually assume that you probably didn't state the boundary as clearly as you thought you did. So if that's the case, then you just need to really, really get clear about what that is so you can re-communicate that. Or, side note, boundaries always work better if there's a consequence attached. But here's the thing. Don't ever, ever, ever give a consequence if you know that you 100% cannot follow through on it, because that's absolutely the worst thing you could do. It'll make the whole situation worse. So if you find that you're maybe a little bit unclear and you maybe weren't super articulate in stating that boundary, or that you didn't follow through with the consequence that you stated. So one of those 2 things is probably going on if they continue to test you, okay? Now, hand in hand with boundaries, oftentimes, anybody here have trouble saying no? So let me know, drop a heart or a star or a no in the chat if you have a hard time sometimes saying no, right? So often we all do. So here's the thing. 4 quick things if you have a hard time saying no to people. I want you to follow these quick steps, right? So first and foremost, if somebody's asked you something, just tell the person you need to think about his or her request and that you're going to check your schedule and you'll get back to them as soon as you can. Now, I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions, okay? Am I doing this because I'm fearing this person's disapproval? If the answer is yes, say no to that request. Okay, second question. Am I doing this because I have a need for this person's approval? Again, if the answer is yes, say no to the request. And lastly, ask yourself, am I doing this because I genuinely want to from the bottom of my heart? If the answer is yes, then say yes, okay? So the irony in all of that, you guys, is that the more that you say no, following those guidelines, the more that you'll find that you end up receiving more approval and less disapproval than you're currently getting in those situations. Okay, so that's boundaries. And again, if you want all of that, I'm happy to send it to you. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of homework, like I stated earlier, around really getting clear about what your needs are inside of a relationship. And this can be something for the future, right? So getting really, really clear now and kind of creating that menu, if you will, for that future person that you're going to call in. If you're in a relationship and maybe it's complicated and this has been a difficult space for you, this will be really powerful. So no matter what your current situation is, I want all of you to take, just block out 10, 15 minutes and just take some time for yourself, and I want you to really think about this. And again, happy to send this to you as well. So when we think about needs in relationship, I really want you to think about mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, and sexually, okay? So you can write that down. again, I'm also happy to send it to you, so don't worry about it if you didn't. And so again, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, and sexually. I want you to take a piece of paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It says 6 things. I want you to get 6 pieces of paper. And this is important. And I want you to put one of those needs right on the top of each of those papers. So I want you to complete an entire page for every single area of those inside of your relationship, or inside of what your needs are in general for a future relationship. And even if you already, let's say you are in a current relationship and you already have that in that particular area, I still want you to write down specific needs, right? So let's say it's physically, and maybe your partner gives you a hug every day, but it's something that's so important. So in that example, right, you would still write down like, I need hugs every day. And if you're not currently in a relationship, again, I want you to get really clear on this, because it's going to make what's next so much easier. If you are in a relationship and maybe it's suffering or struggling, have this conversation with your partner and look for ways, like literally both of you do this exercise, and look for ways that you could meet each other's needs, right? And again, thinking ahead in the future, when you call in that love, that person, your person, this is going to be an incredible exercise that you guys can do together. And it's a great check-in, right? Maybe every 6 months you have a check-in date on needs, and is it still working, and are these getting met for us in the way in which we feel that they should. So that's your homework, to create that clarity, to be able to get really clear on your needs inside of a relationship, and to think about somebody in your life that it's challenging for you, and what boundary needs to be established and maintained. And then I want you to execute those things that we talked about today. So, as always, of course, drop any questions in the comments or shoot me a DM, and I would love to be able to explore and answer any of those with you in real time. And then, of course, also, as a reminder, if there's anything specific that you would like to dive in and engage in these conversations for future lives, please do let me know so that we can incorporate that in the planning. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon.